Hello, everybody, and welcome to my Independence Report. Hi, my name is Kevin McDonald, and we are going to be talking today and for hopefully every day between now and the inauguration in 2025. We are going to be talking about politics and taking care of each other. And let me explain a little bit, first of all, about what my Independence Report really is. I believe that we are all one. I know that. I believe it from the bottom of my heart. And I also know that we need to work to eliminate hate, division, and fear from all of our lives. And that means that as Americans, we need to work together. We can't divide ourselves into segments or into groups, or Christian nationals, or the left wing and the right wing. We all need to understand that we are all one, and that's what this show is going to be about. It's going to be about 15 minutes or so in length, and we are going to talk to you about a little bit about history and a little bit about current events, what's going on now, and try and give you a real sense of what's actually going on from a perspective of being fairly neutral. I believe that we all need to take care of each other, regardless of what we look like, who we love, all of those things that we need to take care of each other, because that's the only way that we as a country are going to be able to come together, is to eliminate hate, division, and fear. Right now, there's a lot of that going around, and we aim to work to eliminate all of that, because in order for us to continue to be the country that we strive and wish to be, we are going to have to come together. The only way that we can come together is to eliminate hate, division, and fear, and to value each of us and our different opinions, and to be able to talk in regards to that. This being the first show, I wanted to go back in the midst of time. There's certain events that happen in history that you remember exactly where you were when they happened. JFK's assassination would be one, Bobby Kennedy, Martin Luther King, if you're somebody of a certain age. A lot of you have just learned about these people from history books. Well, I'm going to tell you about a guy who I would consider an American patriot. There's a couple of guys that we're going to talk about today. The first guy we're going to talk about is Lyndon Baines Johnson, or LBJ, as he was called. LBJ became a congressman in the late 1930s, and he stayed as a congressman until about 1950, and then he became a senator from Texas. He was a senator from Texas, and he was a rival of John Kennedy in the 1960 election. Well, John Kennedy needed to win Texas, and he thought Lyndon would be a good choice. So he nominated him for vice president in 1960. It was a very close race, and he and John Kennedy beat Richard Nixon by the skinniest of margins, which is how all of our elections are these days, why I encourage everybody to get out and vote. But they won by a very small margin. And then, of course, as you know, John Kennedy was killed after the Bay of Pigs, after the Cuban Missile Crisis, and he had a whole plan of what he was going to accomplish in his time. Well, his time got cut short by an assassin's bullet on November 22nd of 1963. I don't know, maybe you've seen the picture of Jackie Onassis, at that time Jackie Kennedy, standing with Lyndon Baines Johnson as he was taking the oath of office on the airplane on the way back to Washington, D.C., with the president's body in the hold down below Air Force One. He remained president. In 1964, he was reelected in a landslide because he was considered to be far and away the best candidate out there. And during his 4 years, he accomplished a great deal. He redid Medicare and Medicaid. He did the Voting Rights Act. He helped minorities get a leg up. He had a very consequential run. The only thing that he did probably that was not of best interest was he escalated the Vietnam War. Well, 1968, which has some eerie parallels to 2024, he decided that he was not going to run for president again. And I remember distinctly watching television. We had a black and white TV at the time, and this was 1968. And we had one TV in the house, and there were 3 channels, and they were all carrying the president's message live. And he said, and I quote, "I will not seek, nor will I accept the presidency of the United States." And my mother turned to me and she said, "You're going to have another president." I only had one when I was growing up, and that was Franklin Delano Roosevelt, who actually served 3.5 terms. So he was a president for almost 15 years. And so Lyndon Johnson retired, and he lived until 1973. And I would consider him one of the great patriots of the United States in the 20th century. Well, there's another guy that I want to talk about, and his name is Joseph Robinette Biden. And he was born in Scranton, Pennsylvania, one of 4 kids. And in 1953, the Biden family moved to Claremont, Delaware. And at the tender age of 29, Joe Biden became a senator for Delaware in the United States Senate. He served as a senator, and he actually became very well known because he would go home via the train every day so that he could be with his family. Well, unfortunately, shortly after his Senate election, his wife, daughter were both killed in a car accident. Hunter Biden and Beau Biden were critically injured in the car accident, and he was sworn into the Senate at his son's hospital bedside. Well, he had a great run as a senator. He ran for president several times. He didn't win the presidency, but when Barack Obama did want to nominate somebody as his vice president, he chose Joe Biden. Joe was vice president for 8 years, and then he took 4 years off, and then he decided, because of circumstances that were happening in the country, he felt compelled that it was time for him to run. So he ran for president in 2020 and has been president for 3.5 years. Well, at one point, and this is one of those times when you probably will remember this, but at one point in time, and this is just 2 weeks ago, he announced that he was no longer going to seek the presidency and backed his vice president, Kamala Harris. Joe Biden, because of the service that he gave our country for his entire lifetime, is an American patriot. I believe history will look very fondly upon his presidency, and because he accomplished some great things, and also on him and his body of life work being a senator and also suffering the tragedies that he did, including the death of Beau Biden while he was vice president. It is unfortunate that because of politics the way it is today, he has been viewed by some as being a crook or doing bad things. They've been trying to, the Republican Party has been trying to tarnish his reputation for the last several years. And they still, to this day, do not have anything of concrete that they can charge him with. Now, keep in mind that Hunter Biden, his son, had problems with drug abuse and other issues, as did some other presidents. I don't know if you remember Billy Carter, who was the brother of Jimmy Carter. But Billy Carter was a beer swiggling kind of guy who would take a leak on the side of the barn and was not what you would consider a great role model for being the brother of a president. But and in fact, at one point in time, they created something called Billy Beer, and so he was that kind of an individual. But that happens a lot. You can't control your relatives and what they're liable to do, and many presidents have had those issues during their presidency. But the fact remains that Joe Biden has proven to be one of the most consequential leaders of our time and is an American patriot. And I believe and I know that history is going to prove over time, when everybody dies down, the ferocity of the arguments against him, and they're going to, historians are going to prove that he was a very consequential president, and that he was a great American patriot, as was Lyndon Johnson, as was John Kennedy, and so many others that we have had the opportunity to look at and to be part of. So I hope that kind of gives you a little bit of a background on Joe and his family and what he went through, and losing 2 kids and his wife. Now Jill, his current wife, is a teacher, and she's a marvelous lady and became a great first lady as well. As a matter of fact, she's the only first lady that continued to work while she was in the White House. And these people are the salt of the earth, and they really are indicative of what we can be as Americans. And they tried very, very hard, and continue to do today, and because Joe Biden's not done yet. His term will not be over until January of 2025. And in the meantime, we have an election to do. We've got this is the most, I've been around for over 60 years. This is the most consequential election of my lifetime. And I do not say that lightly, because of the different aspects of the 2 candidates and what they stand for and who they are. I think Kamala Harris is going to make for a wonderful candidate, and I will say it here, I'll say it now, I'll say it loudly, and I'll say it longly. I support Kamala Harris for president, because I think that the other guy, who we're not going to talk about very much until he determines that he would like to try a different method other than preaching hate, division, and fear. If he gets rid of that, then we'll talk more about that guy. But in the meantime, Kamala Harris is one that is trying to bring the country together, and I hope everybody recognizes that. Again, this is Kevin McDonald. You're listening to My Independence Report. I'll be back tomorrow with another interesting idea that I might have. I hope everybody has a great day, and remember, be kind to one another, because each other's all we've got.